Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Durrani, and I'm your host. Hey, Rick. It's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, brother Drew. What's happening, bro?
Oh, man, I'm excited about today. And I know the audience can't see this, but behind you have a pretty cool car there. Is that yours?
Actually, it's Maggie Carey's wish car. She
Oh, her
said
wish
today in
car.
one of our meetings, I want a purple Lamborghini. So I produced it. We
Well, see,
manifested it.
so that's the kind of guy you are. You find a need, you fill a need. So I'm impressed. So it's great
Manifest.
to have you on today, Rick. And I have heard your story, and I get emotional every time I hear it. And it's you are an inspiration. Um, I would love just to start off with that question. Like, you got here somehow. If you could tell the audience your story, I'd love to hear it again. And it's all yours, my friend.
Sure. Thank you, Drew. And thank you guys for, for popping in here too. Appreciate the support and I appreciate everything you're doing, Drew, in the world. When I heard you talking last week about what you were doing and how it happened in your own life that this community came together, I was especially touched again, as always, because it's a terrific story. And so thank you for caring enough to provide a place for men to, to learn what others have gone through so that we can feel safe to, make our own journey. So I appreciate what you've done for us. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, my friend.
So, I think that every time I talk about this story, it has a different point of view, and I'm looking through a different lens. So, interestingly enough, where I am right now, I'm with some family down in Florida, and there's a young person here who has also had a difficult road, very similar to mine, in that his dad passed when he was a young boy. He was about 12 years old, so had also gone through some similar things. And so here I am. I find myself just kind of accidentally at a place where I'm staying with some family, and he's also a family member of one of the folks here. And so here I am with a guy who, is 30 years old, and I'm going to be 61. So I'm kind of looking at someone who is still dealing with some of the things that I dealt with. So to take you back, I was a very happy, pumped up, excited, enthusiastic kid, the youngest of three in an Italian New York family. And everything's going along pretty smoothly. I'm doing my thing. And when I was about 10, I ran into my dad's bedroom one night and I said, "Hey, Dad, in school, we were asked, what would we want to do for a living when we grow up someday?" So as a depression baby, auto body man, guy who really came up with nothing. And he said, "Son, I would be a lawyer." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because lawyers have power and money, and that's what you want." I said, "Okay, thank you, Dad." Ran out of his room, went back to school next day. I said, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer." So here I am. I'm going to college. I go to Iona College here in the local area. For those of you who are from New York, Westchester County, I go to Iona. I'm in pre-law. And after my freshman year, my father, who was everything to me, my whole life, my world, he dies suddenly of a heart attack at 53, and I'm 19. And here I am. I got no GPS. I got no direction. Even though I had a great mom and brother and sister and plenty of support around me, I was completely alone. When this guy died, I mean, literally our whole family crumbled, our world disappeared in one day. And it was nothing we could, plan for or have any warning for. He was the kind of guy who thought he was going to live forever. Here he was, 53 years old, in the prime of his life, had so much ahead of him, and he was just dead in 1 hour. And I'm 19. It's my between, going from freshman year to sophomore year of college. And I can tell you, I still remember how I felt that day. I felt as alone, clueless. I literally had no idea. Of course, I was in shock like any family member would be.
Mhm.
But I, in particular, felt like I was never going to be able to make it. I was never going to be able to figure out how to go forward. without this guy's guidance. And my father was very strict. He was very difficult. He was, what you would consider, like a really heavy-handed Italian New Yorker born in the Bronx. His father died when he was 3. He had to, survive on his own. So he was also traumatized, in a similar way as a young kid. So here I'm 19, and there was a part of me that said, well, I got to do the right thing now. I got to kind of take care of my mother and brother and sister, who were all older. And I just felt like they were so lost. I wanted to move forward and take care of them during this really tragic event. So in the beginning, I said, all right, I'm going to just buckle down. I'm going to be the man. I'm going to step into my father's shoes. I'm going to lead this family. And so when I went back to school in the fall, my father died in August. School started in September, started sophomore year. My mother said, no, you're going to stay in college. Your brother will run the body shop, whatever. We'll figure it out, but you are going to be a lawyer and whatever, and we're going to honor your father's wishes for you, whatever. Now, meanwhile, funny thing is, I didn't want to be a lawyer. I just wanted to be, my father's son. I wanted to be whatever he wanted me to be. So I didn't even have a goal or an idea. I was just kind of programmed to follow what this guy, because he gave me good advice all the time. Everything was going well. So, it's funny to think back what might have happened had he lived, and, but that's past history. So I go back to college, and, I'm playing a card game. I'm kind of hanging out with my friends and some guys from the dorm, and, one thing leads to another, a little drink. Now, meanwhile, I was not a partier before this. One drink leads to another, leads to a joint, leads to some lines, leads to whatever, I'm just, because I'm literally in shock and depressed and grieving, I'm super vulnerable for all of these things. And, so what do you do when you're either having a great time in college or you're struggling? You do drugs and you drink and you party and you just do all the things that may seem like fun at the time. And they also feel very good when you're numbing the pain.
Numbing the pain.
But what was happening was, and I didn't realize this, was I was hoping that I would die myself so that I could go with my father. The subconscious death urge was in full bloom. And ironically, I maintained my schoolwork. I kind of hid it from everybody. Of course, people were always thinking, oh, this poor guy, he just lost his dad. Oh man, we know how big a person he was in the community and all this stuff, and how much Rick depended on him. And so I just kind of went down the worst possible road that I could at that time. And it got worse and worse and worse. But ironically, like any good entrepreneur, I figured out how to make the best of it. So, began dealing and began doing all of the things to kind of put myself at an even higher level and maintain the ability to continue to use. And, in my particular case, it was cocaine. That was kind of like my drug of choice. And it actually made me kind of mellow. So contrary to what other people who are using, stimulants may be feeling, very high or because I was such an enthusiastic and high person anyway, it had the opposite effect on me. So I'm the kind of guy who can drink, a double espresso at midnight and go to sleep. So ironically, in my body, my brain chemistry and my body, stimulants bring me down. There was a double-edged sword there, in that I could do a lot of it and no one would even know. I wasn't jumping out of my skin. I was actually calming down. So people thought, wow, Rick is really handling this well. He's kind of, almost like a Zen master about this. But it got worse and worse and worse. The people I was around, from like 82, my father died in 81, maybe 82 to 85, 86. I graduated in 84 from Iona, and I took over the business. So now I was in a position to even have a little bit of money, have a little bit of freedom. And I was literally on a destructive path
What happened
kind
to the lawyer idea back then? Because
of,
you still
my
you
father died.
decided
It
not.
died with him. I
It
was
died
more
with him,
interested.
even though your mother wanted to have
Yeah.
that go through.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually got out of pre-law, took
Yeah.
my boards, was accepted to law school, didn't want to do it. I wanted
Okay.
nothing.
All
I
right.
wanted to just kind of be my father. So I wanted to take
Sure.
over that business.
Got it. Got
And
it.
I begged my mother. She said, okay. My brother was against it. And I was really, I'm lucky I didn't get arrested or die in any particular moment. So it was that bad.
Okay.
I don't know anyone um, in my particular circle who survived what I did, and the kind of levels and the kind of people that I was around. It was just, it was the worst possible nightmare for my family. My sister and my mother were begging me to try to straighten out. I just ignored them. I didn't hear any of the voices of
Mhm.
the people who loved me. I was literally on a path of destruction. Uh, it's the best way to put it. Driving as fast as I could, being in the worst possible neighborhoods and with the worst possible people. I just kept attracting more and more of that. The people who represented what I was doing, and it
Right.
was it's not something that I'm proud of, but it was just something that happened one day at a time. It was just
Yeah.
it was the simplest path to destruction, and I was ignoring it because I was just lost. I was medicated, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't fix it.
Right. And you had said you wanted to be with your dad, so you were going to try
Yeah,
anything it took
yeah,
to make that
yeah.
happen.
I didn't mind dying. I did not
Right.
particularly want to be arrested and go to jail,
Right.
but I could have any particular night where I was and with what I was doing. It was very easy. I don't know how I didn't
Hmm.
get arrested or so it's a miracle the way this whole thing unfolded, which is I guess why it's an interesting story.
Right.
And then one night I was living in a house in Mayapack, kind of a bachelor pad, which was just like an opium den
Hmm.
to the times 10 in like early 1986. I got the mail. It's like 4 a.m. I've been up for like 5 days. I got my mail on my coffee table in my living room. I'm sitting there in my underwear,
Hmm.
and I'm looking at the wall in front of me, looking at the TV, and I'm seeing like mice running up the wall and running down, and they were not there. I was hallucinating.
Hmm.
I'm watching mice running up and down the wall, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, what's going on here?" And I open a letter from my high school biology teacher.
Okay.
Now, this is a guy who my sister had for bio 10 years earlier. I had a great story with him. Um, I'll just give you a brief. When I got into high school biology in ninth grade, I was a bit rambunctious as a student, so I couldn't pay attention.
Right.
So toward the end of the year, although I knew the subject matter, I didn't do the labs. And so my guidance counselor says, you're going to fail biology if you don't drop this class. Mr. Haskell is going to fail you. And I was like, all right, well, I'll drop it and take it next year. Next year comes, and mind you, I got A's in everything. And I
Hmm.
just got this, potential F in bio.
Yeah.
So the second year, she says, and the guidance counselor says, well, you're going to take Miss Frame. She's the other bio teacher. And I said, no, I want to take Mr. Haskell again because I want to show him that I can do it. So in 10th grade, I take Mr. Haskell and I ace the course. I become a teacher's assistant. So
Hmm.
because I'm a year older than the other kids, I'm kind of helping a little bit. So him and I bonded. When I got to the class that first day,
Yeah.
he just looked at me and he's like, Mr. Gabrielly. So he's thinking, why would this kid take me again? No one's ever
Exactly.
done this.
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to show him that I could really perform. So we bonded. So that's kind of like the backstory.
Right.
So
Right.
here I am now. That was like 1978. I get this letter from him in 1986 saying basically, I heard from some of the guys that you're off the deep end and you're in danger. I know a great rehab place over here in Rockland County. No one has to know about it. It's just between us. Um, almost suggesting like that he would uh, help facilitate this for me.
Right.
And at that moment, so again, 4 a.m. after a 5-night bender, I'm looking at the walls and I'm hallucinating. I open this letter, and after reading this letter, I close it and never touched another drug. A
That's
switch went off.
unbelievable.
A
Huh.
switch went off in my mind and heart at that moment. And the best thing I can say to you is two things that happened. One is I actually felt in my mind, I can't party any more than this. This is like, I've already done all of it. The fact that I'm still alive, maybe I did enough. And then if this guy cares about me this much, and this was the only person that I would have listened to, because again, all my family and friends were telling me, Rick, be careful, you're going to be in trouble, you're going to die, you're going to get arrested. I heard nothing.
Right.
But I read this letter and something changed. So I call it the currency of connection. I felt something that was probably the closest thing to my father touching me on this earthly plane. And again, I don't know why this happened. I mean, I maybe have a little clue now because of some of the work I've done since that day.
Right.
Still, as a human being, as a man, I still don't know what happened, other than it was divine intervention. Whether you want to say God stepped in, or my father stepped in, or the angels on behalf of my father, and but anyway, Noel Haskell was the messenger of that particular "you're important" message.
It's amazing. It's interesting though the timing you read that. You could have read that at 2 p.m. when you hadn't started, and it may not have meant anything to you. You were in a state that you would realize you'd hit rock bottom, and you happened to open it at
It was as
the
bad.
perfect moment. It's like a perfect storm.
It was as low as you could be. It was as alone as you could be. It was as, fucked up as you could be, and so to play in plain English.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's interesting is I did not know how to recover at that moment. So I did not know what recovery would look like. I did not know what happened in the first place. So I didn't know what the steps were to feeling like myself again. I did not ever really feel like myself again, because with an experience like that, you can't really, once the parachute's opened, right, you can't fold it the same way again. So, but what happened was I had a good friend who said, let's go play racquetball. Let's do things to move your body, to kind of do the things that you would do if you were trying to be a healthier version of yourself. So I went and did that. And, a couple of good things happened. It took about a year to kind of feel like I had maybe gotten that, the substance and the mindset, the lifestyle out of me, right? So it took about a year of, consistent being away from the people. That was not easy. The people kept coming and I had to tell them no. So that was hard. But I did not have any feelings that I needed to use drugs or use alcohol or replace it with something. If anything, I replaced it with, music was a big part of it. So I still was able to be Rick. I was still able to be enthusiastic. I was still able to find joy, but I was in recovery. There's no doubt. I had done enough to my body and mind and spirit that I had to, come back from something. So I definitely felt like I had to come back. But what's interesting was, I never said to Noel Haskell, that's my biology teacher, thank you for writing me that letter. I never said anything. I just came back. He saw that, so he obviously knew. And we did things together, and he was a good friend of the family. About a year later, after one of these racquetball games, I was in a bar up in Armonk, New York, called the Wampus Inn, which was built in 1640.
Wow.
And I met a woman named Carol one particular night, and I was like in a full court press. We've been together 36 years. We're married 34.
That's awesome.
I literally, found a goddess or an angel to kind of help me with this journey. That was a life-changing experience. 1 year later, Uh,
Ironic at a bar too, right?
it was, yeah. And I didn't hesitate to go out to bars
Yeah.
and do those kind of things.
Yeah, good
But
for you.
what's interesting was that bar, which was built in 1640,
Hmm.
burned to the ground 1 week after we met.
No.
So
Wow.
yeah, it was built in the 1600s and it was there forever. And ironically, that was January of 1987 when we met.
Right.
October of 86, we were
Right.
both there for a Halloween party in costume and didn't know we were there.
At the
So we
same
were,
place? That same
yes,
place?
and it was her first and only time there. And the second time was in January when we met.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we were meant to be in the same place, but we
Right,
didn't meet
right.
the first time.
Yeah.
And then about 12 years later, after we had gotten married and we had a child, we were down in Ocean Grove, New Jersey
Right.
at Noel Haskell's beach house. And
Okay.
we happened to be at the beach, myself, Carol, my wife, and my first son, Alex, who was 3 at the time. So this was 1997.
Okay.
So that was the letter was 86. So it was about 11 years later.
Hmm.
We were body surfing, myself and Noel, and we hit this amazing wave. And um, I went to the shore, hooping it up, and I didn't see him. So I turned around and I looked for him. And then when I turned and looked out into the water, his lifeless body was floating face down in the ocean.
Oh, wow.
So I swam out to him, grabbed him, brought him to shore, and he was paralyzed from the neck down. Put him on the sand. The paramedics came. They resuscitated him. He couldn't speak. He was just blinking and moving his mouth a little bit. Brought him to the hospital. Um, in his hospital bed that night, I was kneeling by his bedside, and I held his hand, and I just leaned over and I whispered, "Now we're even. You saved my life. Now I saved yours." Tears streamed down his face. Again, the currency of connection.
Oof.
He made a full recovery.
Hmm.
Wouldn't let us tell any of his family that what happened. Over the course of another year, he had a surgery, and the paralysis went away. His feeling came back. He lived another 15 years. We traveled. We did all the things you do in life. Neither of us ever spoke of the letter or the beach rescue once.
Unbelievable.
We just lived our lives without ever talking about it. Other people talked about it, but not a lot.
Hmm.
And so, subsequently, I obviously realized at the time why he saved me
Hmm.
and why I saved him. And so it's just a beautiful story of what can really happen when you have a connection. And so was it the quirky nature of him that made me take him for biology a second time? Was it his connection to my family prior to me having him as the youngest of 3 kids? Was it my balls to take him a second
Yeah.
time and
Right.
really do what nobody else would do?
Hmm.
Was it him writing the letter,
Hmm.
risking me shunning him like I did with everyone else? So all these things had to
Yeah.
happen for my, tiny, seemingly unimportant life to be saved. But
Absolutely.
I vowed, not only when I read the letter, but certainly when I held his hand that night,
Hmm.
that I would at least commit to trying to tell the story and inspire other people. But it wasn't until 2020 that Carol and I wrote the book, The Currency of Connection. But maybe a few years earlier, my good friend Genevieve Cadell, who I mentioned, she's a doctor up in New Hampshire,
Right.
a psychotherapist. She's the one who prompted me to. She wanted to interview me to tell this story the first time because I was too afraid to tell people,
Hmm.
this terrible story because
Sure.
I didn't want to be embarrassed at having people know, this horrible past, you
Right.
know.
Well, you were the fact that you trusted yourself to be emotionally vulnerable is quite impressive. It's not easy to do that, Rick.
Can I say something just real quick?
Sure, Scott.
Rick,
Hold on, hold on, hold on. So, so Rick, we know that there was some kind of divine intervention there somewhere. Where you are now, how did you use that story to bring you to where you are now? Because the currency of connection, you are a master at connecting the right people at the right time.
Thank you, Drew. Well, I still feel like I'm that kid.
Yeah.
And so, we started talking early on when we got on the community room today about, not growing up. And so
Hmm.
I was determined to not only finish my childhood and somehow make something productive out of it, because that's what I was taught, right? If I'm going to honor my father,
Right.
I've got to try to honor what he did with his life to try to give me a better life. And so in connecting people and saying, you know what, man, everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. There is not one person that I come in contact with, no matter how good their life looks, no matter how, you know, the highlight reel of their social media looks, we are all struggling with the same stuff. All our problems are very similar. We've all got problems. We all want more money. We all want more love. We all want to be healthier. So we all want to do these things. We want to make great stuff. We want to say great things. We want to have good content. So everyone I meet, I know they're fighting a hard battle. They may not tell me right away. They might say, Rick, I got it all going on, man. Everything's going well. But if I talk to them a little bit further, or if I bring them together with the right people, man, that's when they might be able to say, hey, you know what I'm struggling with? But sometimes we have to know each other's struggle in order to open up. And I'm basically here to give people permission to say, you know what? This is how I can relate to what you, or maybe I'm not relating at all, but I can understand because we have problems and issues together. And sometimes it's not even life threatening, but it could be just enough to take us off the path. So the way I bring people together, and the reason I do it, is because I know what isolation feels like. I know what feeling alone feels like. And you know what? It could be today. I could feel isolated and alone today. When we hang up this podcast, I could feel isolated and alone in a room full of people, just because what's going on in my own heart and
Right.
mind, might take me there. So we're not immune from any of this stuff. This could, any day could be the day you hit bottom again. And so having support around you, knowing, building the tools, being in a group like this, having other men around us who say, you know what, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not there. I'm not done, or I'm not even whole. I'm
Hmm.
broken.
Yeah. Have you told that story to your children?
Yeah, I have. And, they both see it differently. They both process it differently. So
Hmm.
my older son sees it very differently. I would say that he is um, more of a critic of it and of the path than my younger one. So ironically, they have very different personalities. So I think that the way my older son was raised
Hmm.
is a very different life. Me as more of a disciplinarian, me
Okay.
as a new parent, that time in my particular life and with my wife. So I think his world, his trajectory was very different. So how he sees me, I think, is much more of a villain in that story. And how the younger one sees me is he can relate much more. Again, whether it's a birth order thing,
Right.
personality thing, but yeah, they both know it, but they both see it totally differently. The older one never talks about it. The younger one, we talk about it regularly.
What's the age difference between the boys?
One is 28, one is 22, 6 years.
So that 6 year difference.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
And,
That's
and, and
amazing.
I would say my older son was really raised as an only child, because he was an only child for 6 years. So, whatever your belief on the amount of formative years that we have, right?
Right.
Six is a lot.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely is.
his world was completely, he was the only person in his world for 6 years. So
Right.
when the little one came along, even though he wanted a sibling desperately,
Right.
of course, we all know how that goes when you're not
Yeah.
the only
Yeah. The
anymore. You have
attention.
to share everything, and I think I was different. I think my wife
Right.
was different. I think
Hmm.
that, I know in my family, my brother and sister, who were 14 and 10 when I was born,
Right.
were raised in a different life than I was raised in.
True. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So, Rick, we want to spread the word that you're here and available to connect with people. What are you working on now that you want people to know, and what's the best way to get in touch with you so people can learn more about what you do and how you help people?
Thank you, Drew. So, the two things that I'm working on right now that I think are the most important is my podcast. It's called The Road Ahead Cafe. And that is, I'll put up even though you guys, this is not going to be a video, I'll put up a virtual background, which kind of shows those things. So The Road Ahead Cafe is my podcast with Frank Vandenhorst and Peter M. Fellows. Frank is a Dutchman and Peter is a Canadian. So you got the New York Italian, you got the Dutchman and the Canadian. So The Road Ahead Cafe the most fun I have each week is Thursday mornings when I record this show and get with these two guys. I call them elders because they're older than me, so I'm excited about that.
And what's the tagline you say about what is it? What's the tagline for the Road Ahead Cafe? About ordinary.
Three ordinary guys, one extraordinary mission. That's to help elevate your life.
Yeah.
So the three of us are really not gurus. We're just regular people. Mm-hmm. We explain how we go at life through our own lenses, and it's been fun. We're in our 80th show already. It's a weekly show, so we were going to give it 6 months and see if it would last. And it's the most fun I have every week. And so the Road Ahead Cafe podcast is out there. And in last November, we built an online peer coaching community called The Source, which is, something we all wanted to do, and we never succeeded at it before. But the three of us together, with our resources and again connection, we were able to build this community of like-minded, incredible community builders. And so we're happy that's it's working, and it's not only nourishing for the people involved, but the ways we continue to grow and really give the community the voice. It's not about the three of us, it's about the people in it. So that's been very successful, and it's a members only community. And it's something you can find out at thesource123.com.
That's beautiful. Best of success with that, Rick. Tell us about the books you've written and where we can find them.
I'm a 4-time author. One of the books I read was a trade book in the dental industry, which I have an iron in the fire in a dental practice, which I teamed up with my sister and brother-in-law on, called Scarsdale Dental Spa. So I'm a visionary marketer in that business, created a new way to offer dentistry. And I wrote a book called Dental Practice Bliss, which was for dentists. And then I wrote 2 books on marriage before getting together with Carol. I was a marriage coach, and I also wrote the book, The Currency of Connection, with Carol. During the pandemic, we were sitting around trying to figure out what to do and really struggling with isolation ourselves.
Of course.
So we wrote a book not only about this story you all heard today, but ways in which to connect to create more energy, value, and meaning in your life and the lives of those around you.
Rick, I want to thank you for being you, and I appreciate you. And the more of Rick Gabrielly we all can get, the better off we're going to be as human beings. Thanks again for coming on, Rick. Always grateful to have you as a friend, and I'm very grateful you and I have met, my friend. Thank you so much.
As am I. Thank you. Thank you, Drew.
Take care, Rick. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second, because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.